Hello and welcome back to In the Corner. I'm Cash. Episode 43 is currently April 23rd, Wednesday. Listen, we are in a very big fight week for Chris Eubank Jr. Conor Benn. It was announced today that it is officially sold out. The Tottenham Hotspur Stadium in London. 65,000 plus people will be there on Saturday. I can't wait for this. I've been thinking about it a lot because of all the fights that are coming up in the next few weeks. I feel like this may be the most true 50-50. Even though, if you look at next weekend's schedule, Canelo versus Skull, all three of the fights at Times Square, Inoue Cardenas, I'm excited for all those. Maybe more than this, but also less because I feel like those ones I know what's going to happen. The only one is Tio and Barboza, and of course there's upset potential in all of them. But I really feel like Tio and Barboza is the only one that's like a 50-50. This one, I don't know why. I just kind of feel like I know. I don't know what's going to happen. Obviously, I'm favoring Chris Eubank Jr., but it's just such a hard fight to really piece together what's going to happen because of, the weights. Conor Benn has never fought at this weight class before. We don't know how much of a factor size is going to play in this equation. And we don't know what's been going on with both recently. It's been a really crazy build-up. And we're going to talk about this a lot more on the next episode, but we are in full swing of fight week. They've already done the open workouts and the grand arrivals. Tomorrow's going to be the press conference. That should be pure chaos. I'm excited for that. And then we get the weigh-in on Friday and fight night on Saturday. Really good card. I know people are kind of crapping on it, but I think it's great. You got Lyndon Arthur versus Anthony Yard 3, which, isn't really needed, but this is going to get Anthony Yard to be in a big fight and for him to kind of, get his confidence back because his last three fights have just, since Topuria, have just been odd. And, of course, the last one didn't go that great. It was really a terrible showing, and the guy he fought pretty well. Took him the distance, and it was very competitive. But this is, I think this is going to be a little bit of a different showing from him. He gets through this, he's going to have the confidence, and that's when he's going to step into a fight with someone like Joshua Buatsi. That's a good fight. I think I'm okay with it. Crispin Smith, Brandon Glanton, I feel like is under the radar. That's going to be an awesome fight. CBS is one of those guys you don't really know what you're going to get. You just look at his last two fights. The one with Zerto was a war. It was fantastic. Of course, he was on the wrong end of that, but it was great. You look at the fight with Richard Riakporhe, it was terrible. It was so hard to watch. It was so boring. So we don't really know what we're going to get. We know Brandon Glanton is a big puncher, so I'm excited for it. He's the only American on the card. Liam Smith versus Aaron McKenna is a very much a true crossroads fight that I'm looking forward to. Again, that's one that it's hard to pick just because do you want to go with the young gun or do you want to go with the old experienced former world champion? Who knows? But that's a really interesting matchup. And then also you got Chev Clark, Vidal Riley, which is honestly probably the fight of the night. British cruiserweight title. Chev Clark is no longer undefeated. Vidal Riley has, he's got a lot of promise, but he also got to come over the doubts of being the guy from YouTube. I'm really excited for that one. That's a fight that I've been hoping for a long time. You've had other guys in that equation, but these are the two that I think everyone's really wanted to see fight. And yeah, I think it's a great card. I'm excited for it, but we're going to talk about that more on the next episode. We're going to talk about today and a ton of other stuff as well. But what in the world is going on with UFC 317? We are a little bit under 2 months out, and we don't know what our main event's going to be yet. And of course, that's not insanely far out. The UFC usually likes to have this announced. If they don't have anything announced by the time that 315 comes around on May 10th, that's a big question mark. And, for a while it seemed like, okay, we're unsure. A month ago we were hearing that they wanted to do something like John Jones, Tom Aspinall. And that, of course, as we got closer, it's like, yeah, that's not feasible. Although we did hear Chael Sonnen say that is agreed, which we're going to talk about that in a bit, but I don't know what to make of that. But, that's not going to happen on June 28th. We were hearing that the UFC was looking to do potentially Islam Makhachev versus Ilia Topuria, with Ilia moving up. That would obviously be huge. And there was even talks of that happening with the co-main event being Dricus du Plessis versus Khamzat Chimaev. Now, of course, those were just plans. That was before UFC actually started sending around conversations and stuff, and Islam apparently has been saying that he wants to wait until 315 to decide what his next move is. So it's likely not. We've been thinking it likely won't be him at 317 because that's only a month and a half before. He doesn't want to fight Bilal because they train together. I think that he could still take that fight. We'll see. But the notion is that if Jack Della Maddalena beats Bilal Muhammad to win the 170-pound title, Islam Makhachev is going to move up immediately and fight him. So it remains to be seen what's going to happen at welterweight and lightweight. But that's what we were hearing. Then it's like, okay, we could do DDP Khamzat in the main event with Pantoja Kara-France as the co-main. And I'm like, that sounds great. DDP Khamzat is a fantastic fight. That's a good headliner for International Fight Week. You still get another title fight on it. And then we hear DDP is injured. Now, of course, the main fight that everyone's throwing as their replacement is Hamzah Sheeraz versus Caio Borralho. They both said that they're down for it. They both wanted this to be an interim title fight, which I don't think is necessary. I don't think that DDP is being inactive. They're asking him to return on 4 months' notice, which is very active. He gets injured. He'll probably be ready to fight, in a couple months' time. I don't think that they should automatically then throw in an interim title. I think that that's a little bit stretching it. Of course, the winner of that fight is going to be mandatory for the title, of course, and that's who DDP must face next. But I don't think that there needs to be an interim belt on the line in the same way that Shavkat Rakhmonov versus Ian Gary didn't have an interim belt on the line. And, of course, Shavkat didn't even get the next title shot, but that's another story. But, so I don't think that we need the interim belt on the line. If this fight happens, I'd be totally down with it. If you ask me, I think that Nasruddin Imavov is ahead of Caio in the running order for the belt. I think it really, if there was to be an interim or number one contender fight, ideally it would be Khamzat versus Imavov. I'm okay with Caio Borralho. I still think he's probably top 5, top 6 middleweights. But yeah, I'm totally down with this fight. I don't think it needs to be an interim unless they want to have another title on the line. But listen, you do that with Pantoja Kara-France. It's good, but it's not International Fight Week. And this is what it was seeming like it was going to be until we hear Ilia Topuria saying that camp has begun. He started camp after saying he will only fight if he gets the title shot. And then we start to hear that Ilia Topuria will be fighting for the belt at UFC 317. He will be fighting for a lightweight title, vacant or undisputed. And so we're not sure yet. What I think may be happening is the UFC may be saying, all right, Islam, we're sorry, but you're going to defend against Ilia. You have to. We need a big fight. We can't. We don't have the room for you to wait around until 3:15. We got to get this signed. We got to get this announced so you can get into camp. And they may be telling him, like, we're sorry. We know that you wanted to do this and you probably deserve this with, your title run. But and you've already allowed the featherweight challenger twice. But this is what we got to do. So I think that may be happening, which does suck for Islam. But this is the fight that we need to see. I think everyone wants to see. Again, I wouldn't be mad if they did Ilia versus Charles for the vacant. Maybe this is another possibility. They told Islam, you got to decide. We're not going to hold you to stay at lightweight, but you just got to tell us. And he may have said, okay, fine, I'm moving up to welterweight, either way. And they're like, okay, cool. Ilia versus Charles for the vacant belt. That is exactly what we could be seeing happening at lightweight at UFC 317. I think that there's more chance of him fighting Islam just because Islam, even say Jack de la Maddalena wins, he's going to need at least 3, probably like 4 or 5 months to recover. And then, just to get before he can set his next fight, where Islam's going to be sitting out of the cage he's already going to be out 4 months by the time 315 rolls around. So he can defend the belt at, 317 and then move up after that. Like, it doesn't really matter. So I think that they should do that. I think that is where they're potentially trying to go. It could be Ilia versus Charles for the vacant, which, again, I have no problems with. That's a fantastic fight. But yeah, it remains to be seen. I hope we get an announcement soon. Speaking of UFC announcements, we got to get the announcement for UFC Atlanta. I'm buying my tickets on Friday, and I don't know who the main event is yet. I know they're trying to do Kamaru Usman versus Joaquin Buckley. Something's going on there. I just need a fight announced so that I can get excited. But anyways, that's what's happening with 317. It really is kind of a nightmare scenario for the UFC. International Fight Week is meant to be their big Super Bowl card, the WrestleMania. Of course, it's not necessarily as big in comparison to other cards as that, but still, we're supposed to have the big fight, big card, and right now it's looking like we may not have anything. I was watching the Ariel Helwani show earlier, and they were saying, did the UFC make a mistake? Should they have done Pantoja Kara-France to headline 316 and Sugar Sean versus Marab 2 to headline 317? And I'm like, you know what? Looking in retrospect, that wouldn't have been a bad idea. Because you can totally do Marab O'Malley as the main event for 317 and nobody complains. That's a big fight. Pantoja Kara-France as the headliner, I don't know if you can do that. If you did that as the main event for 316, I think that people would be fine with that. So I don't know. It's a tough situation. I know they're trying. They've tried so many things, and just everyone's getting injured or wanting to move up divisions or not wanting to fight each other, and it's a whole just crap show. And I just hope we get clarity soon on what's happening. But I'm excited for it. My personal prediction, it's hard to say. I do think we're going to get Pantoja Kara-France. I do think we could get Hamzah Borralho on the card. Maybe that's not an interim title fight, but that could still be on the card potentially. Or you could do that, honestly, for co-main event on 318 in New Orleans. but I wouldn't mind seeing this with the I think we could be seeing Ilia versus either Islam or Charles in the main event. I think it could be Islam, but who knows? And I would love that. Conor McGregor wants to come back to face Michael Chandler in a stadium. So, again, we talk about Conor McGregor every week. He has a new idea for a fight. It is interesting that he's saying he does want to come back. For a while, it seemed like he had no interest. He still wants the Michael Chandler fight, which I'm fine with. Michael Chandler's on like a multiple fight losing streak. Him against Conor McGregor is not bad at this point. Him saying he wants to do a stadium, I think that's just him making a crazy demand where he know he'd have to get a lot of money and something the UFC probably wouldn't go for because they like doing the arena. I don't think he needs to do a stadium, but we'll see. I don't even know what's going on with McGregor. We mentioned it earlier today. Chael Sonnen says that Tom Aspinall is agreed. This one is interesting, and again, this is just one of those UFC type conversations. It's like this and Conor McGregor and when he's going to fight again, where it's just like we talk about it every week, and it just seems like it's farther and farther away every time. And everyone trying to kind of, defend John Jones. Oh, he's just trolling. And it's like, I don't know, man. They're saying that fight's agreed. Tom Aspinall did say he knows what's happening next, and he seems happy with it. They may have told him it's going to be MSG, in which John will be out for a year and Tom will be out for a year and a half. And I kind of think that John Jones may be doing that on purpose because of how little Tom Aspinall actually gets fights in. I mean, like, literally, we see him fight once or twice a year, usually just once recently, and he's only in the cage for 10 seconds. He finishes everyone so quick. He's going to come into the fight with John Jones. He's not going to finish John Jones in 2.5 minutes, and it's going to be a lot harder for him, and that's what John Jones is counting on. So I think that that's potentially what we're seeing. Maybe it is agreed. It's becoming the boy who cried wolf, and I don't want to believe anything until it's announced. But yeah, we just need to get that one done. All right, let's move into some boxing news. So Christian and Billy, his next fight has been announced June 27th at the Videotron Center in Canada. It'll be Maciej Sulecki. And this will be for the WBC interim super middleweight title. So we knew that Billy was going to fight for this. We were hearing it could be an IBF eliminator versus Kevin Lely Saggio first. And then Billy, I believe, pulled out of that with some weird reason. And then we hear he and Diego Pacheco had been ordered and were negotiating to fight for the interim belt with the WBC. Pacheco pulled out to go ahead and do a Trevor McCumbee fight or something like that. So it's looking, like, okay, well, Billy's still going to fight for that crown. And we now see it'll be Sulecki, which, is a little bit disappointing just because I feel like, we were talking about Billy facing off against potentially another top 10 168 pounder, and that's not happening now. I do still like this opportunity for Sulecki. He knocked out Ali Akhmedov in a big upset earlier this year, so he kind of does deserve a big opportunity. I don't know if he deserves an Billy-sized opportunity. This is a fight that I think Billy wins. Sulecki will cause for him. We saw Pacheco just run through him last August. And I think that Billy is potentially more dangerous than Diego Pacheco is. Probably is. So I don't really see this being a huge obstacle for him. I am glad that they were still able to at least get him that mandatory position. He'll get ordered to fight Canelo. And unless Turkey has some weird circus fights for Canelo in 2026, like Chris Eubank Jr. or Hamzah Sheeraz, which actually Hamzah Sheeraz wouldn't be anymore because he's moving up to 168. We're going to talk about him in a second, but I don't know. I'd like to see Canelo and Billy. That's the fight at 168 I want most. Either that or in Billy Pacheco. We'll see what happens. Honestly, in Billy Iglesias, which I wouldn't mind. But yeah, on that undercard, we're going to get finally Eric Bazinian versus Mark Butler. That's a fight that was meant to happen a while ago, and, it just didn't happen. I believe that it was Bazinian who got injured. I could be wrong on that, but, that was what we were hearing. And that it would be, that was going to be March 14th. It was announced. It was ready to go. And then like a couple weeks before, the entire event got canceled, which sucks. So I think that's a fight that makes a lot of sense. Eye of the Tiger has like only super middleweights. And by the way, they just followed me on X today, which is pretty cool. But, I feel like they've got a lot of great guys at 168 they can match up. And this is a fight that Bazinian wins, I think. But it's a fun all-Canadian fight. And I'm glad that they're still doing it. And they put it as co-main event on this big card. That's great. So I'm looking forward to it. I think that's a really fun fight. And then you also have the return of Arslanbek Makhmudov versus Ricardo Brown. So we're going to see what happens there. Makhmudov's an interesting guy where 2 years ago he was this monstrous, terrifying heavyweight contender. And, seems like he could be the most dangerous of them all. He's just so menacing and stuff. And now it's kind of like, well, we don't really know what's going on with him. He's off 2 of his last 3 fights were losses, both stoppage. The Guido Vianello fight wasn't the most horrendous thing. I think it got stopped from a cut, but he was just kind of getting beat up in there. Of course, Aja Cabello ran through him, and that was when we were introduced to Aja Cabello on the big stage. But yeah, so I don't know. I hope he can get a good win. He's in with Ricardo Brown, who is 12-0 with 11 knockouts, so they're really putting him in tough. I guess he's just going to be this guy that goes through and does fun, big banging heavyweight fights, so I don't mind it. It is interesting. You also got John Arrobi on that card. He's going to step up to 10 rounders, which is crazy. Leila Boudoin versus Islam Makhachev at super lightweight. That's going to be a 10-rounder, so they're moving her up as well. Luis Santana is going to be in a 10-rounder as well. Wilkins Matthew returns in an 8-rounder, so they're really stepping up a lot of their guys. It's going to be a very long card looking at the amount of 10-rounders on it, but I'm excited. I think it's going to be a good show. Also, some news relating to Hamzah Sheeraz, who we just talked about. So apparently, there's been a lot of discussion about this Ring Magazine card in New York, and, who's going to be main event? Is it Shakur Stevenson, William Zepeda? Is it Edgar Berlanga, Hamzah Sheeraz? Apparently, they're going to be co-main events, which we've heard a lot before, The famous one that comes to mind, at least for me, is Anthony Joshua and Deontay Wilder sharing the Day of Reckoning bill. And, of course, it was never like Anthony Joshua versus Otto Wallin co-main event, Deontay Wilder, Joseph Parker, but it was just that AJ Wallin was after Wilder Parker. That was pretty much it. And I was thinking that's probably what they'll do here. And honestly, I feel like Stevenson Zepeda is by far the main event. Berlanga Sheeraz is a fantastic fight, and it's probably more of a 50-50 fight than Shakur Zepeda is. But Berlanga Sheeraz is not a world championship. It's not one of the biggest stars in America. I don't care what you say. Shakur is definitely a bigger star than Edgar Berlanga is. And, it's not a fight that we've been waiting for a long time. It's a great one, but Shakur Zepeda is a fight we've been waiting on for a year. This should totally be the main event. It's a lightweight WBC world championship. And I don't know. I just feel like that should totally be the main event. Apparently, and this is just so stupid to me, it's going to be treated during fight week festivities is what they say as the main event. So they're going to be last at the press conference, the weigh-in, all that kind of stuff, which is, to me, that stuff doesn't even really matter. In terms of who comes out first. What matters is who's the main event on fight night. And we're hearing on the main event, it'll be Edgar Berlanga, Hamzah Sheeraz, and that they'll be the ones to close the show. So it's just so weird to me. I'm like, okay, so you're essentially making Berlanga Sheeraz the main event with Shakur and Zepeda just being the main event during fight week for some reason. It's so stupid to make Berlanga Sheeraz the main event. The only reason I'm thinking of is Edgar Berlanga. He's a Puerto Rican fighter, and he's probably got a pretty big New York fan base, bigger than Shakur's. Shakur's from Newark, which I feel like honestly translates to New York pretty well. We don't know what kind of venue this is going to be at. I think it's going to be in a weird one, which makes it even weirder for why they would need to be focusing on a lot of fans being there. It's just so odd to me. Times Square, we know there isn't even going to be fans, it sounds like. So if they were going to do this some other location, I don't understand why you need fans there. I'm still looking forward to this card. I don't really care who fights first or last. It's just kind of stupid to me that Shakur Zepeda is a main event and that they're going to treat it like it is, but they won't actually make it. And I think that they're really, the main reason is that they don't want people to watch Edgar Berlanga fight and then leave before Shakur fights and the main event is empty, which I don't think would happen. It's just so weird to me. I don't really get it. It's just, the whole thing is very weird to me. I think that Shakur Zepeda should clearly be the main event. But speaking of Shakur, Eddie Hearn says that he's still with Matchroom, and that doesn't mean that these conversations are not true, but we've known for a while that Shakur is on a 2-fight deal with Matchroom and His Excellency, and that deal will come up. They did the first fight with Josh Padley. Second one's going to be William Zepeda. Eddie Hearn said, no, that fight is with us. We are promoting that fight. After that, he's a free agent. We would love to promote him for the rest of his career, but that is the extent of our deal as of right now. They're going to try and sign him back. We'll see if they do, and he may move on. But, yeah, that's what I was confused about, is that I was like, this is not the end of Shakur's deal with Matchroom. And, it's not. We know that now. The WBA has ordered some fights. We're going to talk about them. At welterweight, they ordered Jerome Ennis, Shakram Giasov, and I'm not too against this as much as other people are. I really want Giasov to get his world title shot after what he's been through and the perseverance and grit that he showed and how good he looked in his last fight, with his first knockout in years, especially on the Boots undercard. And listen, who's Boots going to fight next? We're talking about him moving up to 154, which if he does, then Giasov fights for the vacant, whatever. If Boots stays at 147, he's going to go for undisputed. He can't let go of the WBA belt or the IBF one for that matter. So he's going to have to fight Giasov. And Brian Norman, we're hearing, is going to fight Jin Sasaki on June 19th. I did see Carl Moretti kind of shed some light on that and said, like, I don't know. He made some kind of joke, essentially insinuating that's not the case. I still think it will probably end up being the case. I think it's a decent fight. I think it's one that Brian Norman likely wins, but it should be really fun. And then you've got Mario Barrios, who we're also hearing is potentially reopened to talks with Manny Pacquiao, which I don't hate. Mario Barrios does feel a little bit weird to me because I feel like he's taking these really weird title defenses against guys. It's like, wait, that guy's getting a title fight? And then he goes and he does fight a big name, but it's not a unification. It's Manny Pacquiao, who hasn't fought in, I don't know, 4 years, something like that. It's just really weird to me. We'll see if it actually happens. I don't know if I really believe that. We're hearing that if that does happen, nothing will actually materialize until after the elections in the Philippines on May 12th. I think he's running for senator or something. I don't think that fight happens, but I wouldn't be mad if they did it. But anyways, Barrios could be busy with Pacquiao. Norman could be busy with Sasaki. Neither of them are going to be able, free until the end of the year. You just got through Stanionis pretty quickly. Giasov just got through his man pretty quickly. Meet up this year. Do it in like August, maybe even July. Do it back in Philly. Homecoming fight again. Giasov, that's a good fight. It's one, Boots wins, but it's a good fight. If he wants to fight the guys from Times Square, like Devin or Ryan, he's got to wait for them. He's got to, there's so many guys at 147 for him to fight. But nobody's going to be free until the end of the year. Why not stay active? I say do the fight. The WBA also ordered Gary Antoine Russell to defend his WBA belt against Andy Hiraoka. So Hiraoka has been the WBA super lightweight interim champion for quite some time. So I think it's only fair he finally does get his title shot. I don't mind it. I think this is a decent fight, and I think that Russell should probably take it. There's a lot of killers at 140, and I'm not saying Andy Hiraoka isn't good, but I think that there are some guys that would pose bigger threats to Russell, and I think this is a pretty good title defense, and Hiraoka definitely deserves it as he has been sitting on that belt for a while. Matchroom have won the purse bid for Austin Williams versus Elinosa Oliha. This is for the IBF middleweight eliminator purse bid. I'm really glad that they were able to scoop this up. Part of me was worried after Matchroom pulled out of the Pacheco and Billy purse bids that maybe they weren't pushing these guys to the world title shots yet. They are going to push Ammo towards the 160 title, and I think this is a good fight for him. It's a very, very tough fight, very competitive, the toughest outside of the Hamzah Sheeraz one, and he's really going to have to show something in there, and he's going to have to look better than he did against Patrice Volney, which I thought wasn't even a bad performance. I thought he made good adjustments, but he's got to be on his A game against Oliha. This is a guy who's been waiting for his title shot for a while. I think it's a great fight, and I'm glad that Matchroom won it, and we get to see it on the zone and on a big show. Some interesting fights. So the Jake Paul, Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. card. We know that Zerto's going to be on it. Jake Paul headlining, of course. So it's going to be an MVP and Golden Boy fight. And some people are suggesting, what if we saw an MVP versus Golden Boy fight on the card? And I literally just saw somebody suggest, why don't we do Floyd Schofield, Lucas Bade? I think they've talked about it a little bit. Of course, it was meant to be Floyd Schofield versus H2O Silv, July 20th last year instead. Schofield gets injured. They throw in Lucas Bade instead, and he pulls off one of the upsets and the knockouts of the year over H2O. H2O, by the way, who returns this Saturday on BLK Prime. I may tune in for that because I am a big fan of him. And good to see him come back, but really weird he's not, at least not fighting on the MVP banner. But anyways, it's apparently this fight is reportedly set and they're doing it, and I think it's great. They're really pushing Lucas Bade towards a world title shot, which I think is so weird that they're not just going to do the H2O rematch. They were so invested in H2O, and now they're pushing Bade quicker for the world title fight than they were doing with H2O. They're trying to get him that they're like advertising, like, could we do like a tank fight? They are working with the WBA. They're trying to move him up the rankings. Floyd Schofield is very highly ranked with the WBA as well. This very well could be a title eliminator. Maybe not for number one, but it can be up there. The winner of this is going to get a big jump in the ratings. I think it's a great fight. I think it's a competitive one. I think it's close to 50-50. I favor Schofield. I think he is more skilled, but Bade is a big puncher and is a big challenge for a guy like Floyd Schofield, who hasn't always put in the most impressive performances like his last one, and is facing a lot of criticism after what happened with Shakur Stevenson on February 22nd, pulling out of that fight just days before. So there's a lot of questions that remain to be asked, but I think that this is a fantastic fight to be added on that card. I think it automatically becomes the best fight of the card when you already have a unified championship and Jake Paul versus a former world champion. So that's going to be an awesome event on June 28th. I'm just saying, man, they may be rivaling UFC 317 there. They really may be. I wasn't sure, but it may be pretty close. We'll see. I'm excited for that day. It's going to be awesome. So we're going to talk about some comments about what could be next for some of boxers' top stars. So Adam Azim apparently has mentioned Steve Claggett and Regis Prograis as potential opponents for his return in July. I don't know where his return in July is. That remains to be seen. It'll likely be in London, as that's where his last few fights have been. But he mentioned Steve Claggett and Regis Prograis. And first of all, I just want to say this is going to end up being Steve Claggett. I've already heard that's what's more likely. I didn't know about Regis on the table until he said that. And I'm kind of worried that Regis Prograis seems to be becoming a gatekeeper of sorts. It was, of course, Devin Haney when he was still world champion. Then it was Jack Catterall, which I thought was a competitive fight. And then when it was announced it's going to be Oscar Duarte, I was like, oh, that's a little bit step down. But it's not a fight that I think that Prograis would even win, you know? And then you do a fight like Adam Azim. Again, this is similar to Duarte, where I think that you would probably end up putting Prograis as the underdog, but I think that he still has a really good shot in those fights. And it is interesting if Prograis does go this route, but, you know, it's true. Boxer is not going to pay him to come over there. He's going to demand a lot more money than Steve Claggett will, and I don't think that Boxer is going to take Regis Prograis when they can take Steve Claggett and be like, this guy's a former world title challenger. He took TO all 12 rounds, and, you know, Azim is going to stop him. You know, they can do that route, and that's still, I think, a good fight. I think that's still a tough test for Adam Azim. If they do Regis Prograis, I'll be very impressed if they take that fight. And if they win that fight, I'll be very impressed. But when you look at Dalton Smith, who just comprehensively beat Matthew Germain, who I believe stopped Steve Claggett. I don't know if he stopped him, but he at least beat him. And I know boxing now doesn't really work like that, but it's like still, you know, I mean, like Adam Azim, they're doing a good job at building him in a way with these names. Like, oh, look, he beat this guy, but it does not matter. A Dalton Smith fight means so much more than beating Steve Claggett does. So I don't know. I guess that they're waiting. I think that honestly at this point, Boxer may be waiting until Dalton Smith gets himself a world title, and then they're going to go for the world title shot and try and do the Dalton Smith fight then, if they even want it. Because, again, I don't even know if I put Dalton Smith as the favorite in that fight. I think it's such a good fight. But Boxer is just so crazy ducking them. I think it'll be Claggett. I love Prograis, but I'm not mad at Claggett. It's very possible, and that's likely, and I'd enjoy that. Ben Shalom says Ben Whitaker will return in September versus either Willie Hutchinson or Dan Aziz, so they are really stepping him up. Of course, the Liam Cameron fight was good. It was a good step up, and it was a good challenge. As we saw, he had to fight him twice. But from that point, I was like, okay, what are we going to do? Are we going to stay at the Liam Cameron level? Are we going to drop down? Are we going to go up? And they're going up. I mean, Willie Hutchinson was just in a somewhat competitive fight with Joshua Buatsi. He beat Craig Richards with a fantastic performance right before that. You know, again, just challenged for an interim world title. Dan Aziz, you know, he had a fight with Joshua Buatsi, went the distance, didn't win that. Then he had a draw, which was just an odd one. And then the Louis Edmondson fight, I thought was a really bad robbery. I thought that Aziz totally won that fight. And, you know, so I really did not like how that decision went. But regardless, it looks like Dan Aziz may be becoming a bit of a gatekeeper. I'll say this. Ben Whitaker, Willie Hutchinson would be a fantastic build-up. It'd be great on a Riyadh season show or a ring show, whatever. That could be a really good Boxer versus Queensberry fight. I wouldn't mind that at all. I could see that happening. I bet they'll probably go Dan Aziz because Boxer has a better relationship with him. I don't know if Dan Aziz is still fighting with them. I just saw he's actually a 6-rounder tomorrow, so that's how far he's dropped down the totem pole. But I think that's a good fight. I'd honestly probably favor Whitaker in that one. I think Hutchinson is a much tougher fight as of right now. And, yeah, it remains to be seen. But they're really going to step him up the levels, and I'm excited to see that. Speaking of levels, Ian Gary thinks that Leon Edwards is done at the top level. It's hard to argue with him, man. The last two performances from Leon were really bad. And the Bilal one was one thing, because, again, yeah, it was 5:30 a.m., whatever, and it was Bilal, you know, just out-wrestled him. But I don't understand how Leon can lose his belt because he doesn't know how to wrestle properly or at the highest level, and then goes into a fight with a wrestler and seems to have not learned anything about how to fight a wrestler. In fact, he did worse in the Sean Brady fight than he did against Bilal. He got finished in that one. It was so hard to watch. And, I mean, Ian Gary's obviously just trying to build a fight with him and Leon. I think that we're going to see that. And, you know, right now, Leon Edwards is not fighting at the top level. He's still ranked like number 3 or something. He should be like 8. I mean, he's going to have to come back and fight someone top 10 area and get a solid win so we can start, you know, calling him Rocky again, because he's not looked great recently. Liam Smith says that he wants the Chris Eubank Jr. trilogy. He did make a fair point saying, look, I stopped him in 4. He stopped me in 10. Why shouldn't I get the trilogy? And he's right. The only matter of the fact is that he wasn't supposed to beat Chris Eubank Jr. Chris Eubank Jr. beat him and looked good, and that was that. He got his revenge. It wasn't meant to be a trilogy. Stuff like that, when the underdog wins and then the favorite wins after that, they do the comeback. That's usually it. It's usually just one apiece. You move on, and all that matters is that you end with the favorite still winning. It's not like Beterbiev and Bivol where that's a 50-50 fight, and it went either way, so you do it a third time. So I don't think you need a trilogy. I do think he does make a good argument with that, and it could happen if Liam Smith wins and Chris Eubank Jr. loses, but I think that chapter is closed. I really don't need to see it anymore, and I think Liam Smith's career is close to being over, but who knows? He could revitalize it on Saturday with a win over Aaron McKenna. Jahai Tucker versus Truck Simpson is apparently being added to the Vito Milnicki card on June 21st. I love that fight. Jahai Tucker is, he's stepping up recently. He's a guy that Top Rank has been trying to push, but Timothy Bradley talks about him a lot, saying he's not disciplined, and he's been disappointed with him. He hasn't looked great in really any of his fights recently. And Truck Simpson's a guy that has had a lot of promise, but has had 2 close decision losses as of recent. And, he really needs a win, and this is a fight against Jahai Tucker. Both guys, neither of them are undefeated because of, issues with whatever. And this is a very much a must-win fight for both. I think it's a good fight to go on that card. I'd love to see it because loser of that is in a bad spot. And I like to see young fighters matching up like that. It'd be fun. Tommy Fury, oh gosh. So we know that he was obviously returning to the ring May 9th in Budapest. We now know it's going to be against Kenan Hanjalik, who is 4-1. Yeah, and Roman Fury's on the undercard facing Joseph Pabar, who is 7-5. I'm disappointed Roman Fury's no longer fighting Chase Demore on Misfits. That was going to be a fun fight. I don't know what the reasoning is because they're both fighting a week apart. I don't know why Roman Fury left the Misfits fight, which is definitely more money. I'm worried that there's a really sketchy promotion here that's paying them this much money because, listen, Tommy Fury was offered millions of dollars to fight Jake Paul. Said it wasn't enough. It was definitely offered a lot to fight Darren Till and backed out of that. And now he's fighting a 4-1 guy in Budapest. Like, it's so random. And again, this is kind of similar to Brian Norman ducking the Boots Ennis fight, saying, oh, I need $2 million. I need $2 million. And they're like, we're not going to give you $2 million. You're not worth $2 million. He's like, all right, fine. Then he goes and he goes fights for $200K. It's like, I need $2 million to risk stuff like that, which I don't really get because Tommy Fury would beat Darren Till. Granted, Darren Till impressed a lot against Anthony Taylor. He did a lot better than I thought he would. I think it'd be a competitive fight, but I would certainly favor Tommy Fury. And you would have to favor Tommy Fury in the Jake Paul rematch. I think that Tommy Fury's looking at it and he's like, I fought once since then. Jake has fought how many times since the Tommy Fury loss? I think he's fought 5 times since then, while Tommy Fury's fought once. And so it's kind of just like he needs to get his confidence back maybe, but I don't understand why I wouldn't get the Jake Paul fight or a fight with Misfits. Those are his only options to go. As we see here, this is not going to generate a lot of attention. And yeah, Tommy Fury annoys me a bit. Mark Jeffers has agreed to face Oscar Iglesias. Man, we were just talking the other week about how Mark Jeffers has, it's weird. He's got some good wins and stuff. He's wanting to get to that top level, and for some reason he's fighting journeyman, and he's not getting the Callum Simpson fight, which is whatever. I think that's possible, but he is saying, I want to be tested. I want to be thrown up there. I want to be a serious guy at 168. Give me Iglesias. Nobody else wants to fight him? I'll fight him. Those are some big balls. I'd like to see that fight. Undefeated. You would have to throw Iglesias as a huge favorite. But you have to commend Mark Jeffers for being that hungry and being like, I'll fight him. I'll do it. I believe in myself. Maybe he's got something we don't know about. But yeah, I gained a lot of respect for Mark Jeffers for putting himself out there for that. BKFC 75 has been announced for June 6th in Albuquerque. Dave Mendel, Donald Sanchez for the BKFC middleweight strap. Excited for that. Dave Mendel is a good champion. There's a lot of guys in that 185 division. All the big names really are calling for that fight. Mike Perry and him have been circling each other. There's a lot of good stuff to happen with BKFC over the next few months, and I'm looking forward to that. Yeah, I think that should be a pretty fun fight and a pretty fun card. Michael Cieslak has been announced to fight Gian Pascal on June 28th for the WBC Interim Cruiserweight Championship. So it seems like Ryan Rozicki has just been thrown away. Like, this guy's fought so long. And I say fought, I don't mean in the ring. I mean outside of it as well, just to try and get that title shot with Makhachev. Didn't happen. He gets the interim fight with Yamiel Peralta. That is a draw. Then he gets the Badu Jack fight. He gets injured. And now the interim gets put on the line again without him. So he's just been left out to dry, and I hate it for him. Like, actually, he's the worst luck out of any guy right now. I am glad that Michael Cieslak is getting a good opportunity here. He's been a guy at cruiserweight that's kind of been forgotten and hasn't been in a lot of big notable fights, at least not in like the US UK realm. And if he gets an interim belt, he's going to get ordered to fight the WBC champion at one point, and he gets his world title shot. John Pascal is a good opponent, but I think it's one that Cieslak probably wins, so I'm excited to see that happen. And then lastly, I just saw that Marlon Tapales will be returning this Sunday versus John Jett. I'm not too familiar with Jett, but Tapales is a very good operator at 122 pounds. The Inoue loss was about a little bit over a year ago, year and some change, maybe a year and a half, and he's had some good wins since then, and he's close to getting a world title shot soon. Again, once Inoue moves up and all those belts go vacant, there's a lot of guys that are going to get thrown into the title conversation to pick those up, and Tapales is certainly one of them. So that's all I've got for today. A lot of fun stuff going on right now in the world of combat sports. It was a good episode. We don't know what's going on with UFC 317. I hope we get some clarity soon. Friday, we're going to do another episode. We're going to do a full Eubank Benn preview. I can't wait for that. Follow me on X. I'm going to be tweeting like crazy on Saturday during that fight, that whole fight night. I can't wait. Lots of live scoring and live updates and my thoughts as we go along. You've also got UFC Kansas City coming up Saturday, BKFC Italy, some other fun stuff throughout the weekend, which we'll get to. But thank you so much for listening. I look forward to the next episode, and peace out.